Hi all, and welcome back to Let's Play Megaman 02 Supplementary 5. I've been leaving these uncommented for the most part, but I figure this one has enough meat on its bones to warrant some talking. Firstly though, I gotta fix up a stupid mistake I made earlier in the game, that being the missing of a single Cyber Elf. Within Polar Cameros' stage is the Cyber Elf Ati, which I managed to miss because I didn't kill enough of the Roll-in 22s. Otherwise, after completing the Temple of Wind, you should normally have them all. Thankfully though, it's easy enough to go back for. Now then, Cyber Elf 201. I'll be discussing all the different Cyber Elves, their powers, and showing a few of them off. I'll also be writing a bunch of words in a thread if you want to check that out, but this will be good for an overview. Now, Cyber Elves in the game are essentially power-ups allowing you to amplify various abilities of Zero. They're divided into three different categories, the first being Nurse Elves, which restore and amplify health, Animal Elves, which change your abilities and movement speed and various things relating to gameplay, and Hacker Elves, which do various odd things within the game and to the game. The types are also further subdivided into three different sizes, small, medium, and large, depending mostly on the power and permanence of their abilities. Now in the last game we used trans servers to use and download your elves. However, because they're mostly absent from this game, CL instead takes that role for them. You can use her to do a variety of things, but the most interesting of those is feeding elves. Now the smaller ones can be used immediately upon collection, but the larger and more powerful elves require you to cram some E-crystals down their gullets before you can actually use their abilities. Now, the large ones require you to upgrade them twice, like Grandi here. However, the small ones only need one session of feeding. Moreover, the requirements are basically cut into a third of what they were in the first game, making them significantly more reasonable for usage. You can also get E-crystals a lot more easily in this game, especially seeing as we have the filter shield available for usage. They all have slightly different feeding requirements, but they're all fairly comparable, and moreover you can just go straight to their max by pressing down on the selection screen, so it's not all that bad. You need about 7k E-crystals total to fully evolve all of them, and I'm just gonna skip straight to their fully evolved forms here, because I already showed off all the second stage evolutions of their third forms. There's all the pictures if you wanted to see them. They're fairly cool, but you don't really get the full effect unless you see the concept art. I'll be posting a bit of that in the thread as well. Now, in order to use them, you have to go to Process Cyber Elf and download them. You're only allowed to take 3 at a time, and selection is fairly intuitive. You can only select them if they're fully upgraded, but again, the smaller ones can be selected immediately. I'm just going to go straight for the top 3 because I figure they'll probably be the most useful. Using them boils down to going to your main menu screen, in which they're represented by 3 different icons. Nurses with pink hearts, animals with green circles, and hackers with an odd blue nail looking thing. I can't really figure that one out. In order to use them, you just have to select them like so, at which point they'll use their effects. Large ones are really overpowered, like Grandi here, which adds a second layer to your health bar, effectively doubling it. Putik, which prevents you from dying to any spikes or lava in the game instead of just taking a few points of damage. And Dabble, which doubles the effectiveness of any items you pick up. They all have a different effect, like Nurse Elves going straight into your health bar or animals circling around you, but hackers have this cool screen distortion effect that's always been a fan favorite. Unfortunately, the thing about Cyber Elves is they're kind of unstable, and they're also beings of pure energy, and using their effect kinda kills them, which is one of the main reasons you're penalized in your mission score for using them. As such, I will not really be using them in most of my playthroughs. This is an unfortunate thing because a lot of them have really cool effects, some of which I'll be going over now. Some of the elf effects are visually underwhelming and I'll just be talking about them, but many of these things are really cool to look at, and for those you'll be getting video. The 3 elves I've just chosen are Yuppie, Esten, and Acool. A thing to note is that when elves have similar effects, they'll generally recycle prefixes and suffixes relating to their powers, so that you can tell them at a glance. Yuppie's type increases your health bar by 4 notches, which is 8 when doubled with Grandi, and is quite nice. Estan's type gives you a sub-tank, which you can tell is slightly different from the stage ones because it's more red and has a slightly different design. And Acool's type hacks the game and gives you an A rank. Now this is of course bad if you have an S rank already, but if you've been using Cyber Elves a lot, this generally means that you won't have an A rank, and thus they won't be able to get EX skills, so Acool's type is very nice in that regard. Kalob's type runs around and gives you a whole bunch of health. Amic's type refills your health bar fully. Ishtar's type circles around you and deflects some bullets into health. Arnu's type acts like an EX tank in old games and increases your starting lives. Jetta increases your run speed. Kellan slows the speed at which you fall down walls. Ati increases the speed at which you climb up ladders. And Fubufo reduces hit knockback. Bararo I'll be showing off because it's especially cool. B-types like B-Fire I'll also be showing off, but they're just like option fighters behind you. The Sticka types cling to enemies and stop them from moving, while the Bomb Shuros absorb hits until finally exploding. In order to show some of these off, I'm going to need enemies, so I'm going to transfer over to the Sand Wilderness. A thing to know about the Cybros is that you can only have 3 on screen at a time, and a few of the animal and nurse elves like to linger. Which means that it can be a little annoying to use all of them if you're just trying to kill them as quickly as possible. Because you're a mean person or something. Here's B-Fire. It does have, like, combing somewhat, but it's also not all that powerful and doesn't flare all that fast, so I wouldn't use this one personally. Bomb types are especially cool, but they're also not really all that useful because it takes a whole bunch of shots and they don't really do enough damage to justify it. The bird types, however, are really cool. They're essentially like the Beat of the Megaman Zero games, because they rescue you from pits and even allow you to move around a little while invincible to get your bearings. It's quite a cool callback that they included that type of effect. The stopwatch type Cyberelf, like Stockham here, completely freeze all the enemies in the stage, as well as getting you this cool stopwatch ticking effect. It lasts for quite a while too and can make the stage really, really easy. Actually, it lasts a bit longer than I necessarily think it should. It can be fun to pose with your enemy pals though. Now these types are especially cool. You can tell them because they're always named M-something. And they actually change enemies into Mets from classic Mega Man games. They're sometimes known as Metals or Matars, but they're Mets to me. As usual, their helmets are completely invincible to all forms of damage while they're down, and Stockham isn't really helping here, so I'd like it if he'd run out. Thank you very much. However, they will expose themselves when you're near, shoot out a small pellet, and then allow you to kill them fairly easily. They'll change all the normal enemies in the stage into Matars, and to be honest, they're kind of annoying because of how hard it is to kill them. So I'm going to use Menite to kill the lot of them. Menite is like Stockham except more powerful, and he needs to be upgraded a bit. But honestly, I prefer Stockham because when you kill all the enemies in the stage like this, your enemy score is going to take a hit. Also doesn't kill any of the mid-bosses or stage bosses, so not as useful. A couple more types to go over now. Monate here we've seen, and he's quite dead at this point. Hefmardo halves a boss's energy once you get to it, but you only half one boss's energy, so you gotta choose very carefully. Clocktel about halves the amount of time it takes to charge your weapons. Stockham, we've seen, freezes all the enemies in the stage. Etroth increases the chances for enemies to drop items. The M-types change enemies into Mets, as we've seen. Ashiro's type we've already seen. And that's actually the last of the Cyber Elves in this game. There's also a minor type of Nurse Elf that only restores your health by a few ticks, but that doesn't really matter anymore because they're all dead. In the last game, there was a special Cyber Elf named Jackson that you could only get by finding and leveling all the elves in the game, but here it's been removed in favor of a different item that you can only get by murdering your entire collection. This also has the added benefit of making you an unholy god of destruction with 4 sub-tanks, a whole bunch of augmented abilities, and a stupidly massive health bar. It's ridiculous to the point that your Cyber Elf powered body could honestly probably be used as the final boss without anyone noticing. The very thought. Of course, that's never going to happen, and no one's ever going to get to that point, because Cyber Elves are things to only be used wisely and sparingly. Yeah. No. Anyway, that's the end of Cyber Elf 201. If you want to see some pretty pictures and lots of words, again, check out the thread, I'll be linking to it in the description. But other than that, that's really all there is to this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.